In 2015, a leaked test pilot report said the F-35 lost a mock dogfight to an F-16 at 15,000 feet over the Edwards Range. Within days, the internet declared the program dead. 10 years later, Israeli F-35I Adirs flew nearly 1,000 miles into Iranian airspace, dismantled 3 layers of Russian-built air defenses, and came home without firing a single cannon round. The test pilot was right about one thing. The F-35 cannot turn with an F-16. It was never asked to. On the morning of January 14, 2015, 2 aircraft took off from Edwards Air Force Base in California. One was an F-35A, the AF-2 prototype, the second F-35 ever built, the airframe used for high angle of attack flight testing. The other was a 2-seat F-16D Block 40 from the 1980s, loaded down with 2 underwing fuel tanks. The mission profile was simple: basic fighter maneuvers, offensive, defensive, and neutral setups, altitudes from 10 to 30,000 feet. A dogfight. The F-35 lost. In the after-action report, the test pilot, a veteran of the F-16 and F-15, wrote that the F-35 was at a distinct energy disadvantage for every engagement. Insufficient pitch rate. Sluggish nose authority. A helmet so large, the pilot could not turn his head to look behind him. The aircraft could only achieve a missile shot by performing one specific high-angle maneuver, and that maneuver bled energy so fast, the next engagement was lost before it began. 6 months later, in June 2015, a blogger named David Axe published the report on a small site called War is Boring. Within 24 hours, it was on every defense website in the world. Donald Trump, then a presidential candidate, said he would cancel the program. Senator John McCain called it a tragedy. Pierre Sprey, the surviving member of the original fighter mafia, said it confirmed everything he had said for 10 years. The conclusion was nearly unanimous. The F-35, the most expensive weapons program in human history, could not win a dogfight. The conclusion was also irrelevant. To understand why, you have to understand the metric that produced it. Modern fighter design rests almost entirely on a framework that Colonel John Boyd and the mathematician Tom Christie developed in the Pentagon between 1962 and 1964. They called it energy maneuverability theory. It expressed, mathematically, what every dogfighter had always known, that combat between aircraft is a contest of energy states, and the pilot who can convert energy into position fastest wins. EM theory was a revolution. It explained why the lightweight F-86 Sabre had dominated the heavier MiG-15 in Korea. It explained why the F-4 Phantom, the heavy radar missile truck the Air Force loved, was being humiliated by tiny cannon-armed MiG-17s over Vietnam. It produced the F-16, an aircraft built around energy maneuverability principles to such an extent that its pilots could routinely defeat aircraft carrying twice its payload. By 1991, when the F-16 went to war in Iraq, the energy maneuverability doctrine looked unbeatable. Pilots trained to it, engineers designed to it, journalists measured by it. When you read a fighter review in the 2010s, the questions were always the same. How fast does it turn? What's the wing loading? What's the thrust-to-weight ratio? Could it beat an F-16 in a knife fight? This is the framework the 2015 test pilot was using. He flew the F-35 against an F-16, measured turn rate and pitch rate and energy retention, and arrived at the only conclusion the framework would allow. The F-35 was inferior. He was, within his framework, completely correct. The framework was the problem. The F-35 was never designed to win a dogfight. It was designed to never be in one. Open the airframe and you find a sensor system so different from previous fighters that the comparison breaks down. The ANAPG-81 active electronically scanned array radar, built by Northrop Grumman, can detect 23 separate targets within a 100-mile radius in under 9 seconds. It has no moving parts. It can change beams faster than any aircraft can react. 6 infrared cameras built into the airframe, the ANAAQ-37 distributed aperture system, provide a continuous 360-degree picture of the sky and ground around the aircraft. The pilot's helmet display projects this image so the pilot can, in effect, look through the airframe in any direction. The faceted window under the nose houses the ANAAQ-40 electro-optical targeting system, a passive infrared sensor with a laser designator, replacing the targeting pods that legacy fighters carry externally and that destroy their stealth. The ANASQ-239 electronic warfare suite, built by BAE Systems and distributed across the wing edges and fuselage skin, detects every radar emission within range and classifies it against a library of known threats. The communications suite, including the multifunction advanced data link, shares everything the aircraft sees with every other F-35 in range, in real time, without any human action. All of this feeds into something Lockheed calls the fusion engine. The pilot does not see raw sensor data. The pilot sees a labeled, prioritized, color-coded map of reality, updated continuously, with threats identified and ranked. By the time a target is on the display, it has already been classified and assigned a kill priority. The pilot's job is not to find the enemy. It is to decide what to do about an enemy that has already been found. The design specification had a name. Lockheed and the Joint Program Office called it First Look, First Shot, First Kill. It was not marketing, it was the requirement. The doctrine that produced this aircraft was decided in 1996. In 1991, during the Gulf War, the F-117 Nighthawk had flown more than 1,300 sorties against the most heavily defended airspace in the world and lost 0 aircraft. Stealth, as a tactical principle, worked. 8 years later, in Yugoslavia, a Serbian missile crew using a 1960s low-frequency radar would shoot down one F-117, the only stealth aircraft ever lost in combat. The lesson was not that stealth failed. The lesson was that even one bad night against a clever opponent could end a multi-billion-dollar career. At the same time, the Soviet S-300 air defense system, which had entered service in 1979, was beginning to spread on the export market. The S-300 and later the S-400 could engage targets at over 100 miles. Any conventional fighter flying within their threat ring was, by 1996, considered dead. The Joint Advanced Strike Technology Program began in 1993. It became the Joint Strike Fighter Program in 1995. From the first requirements documents, the question was not whether the aircraft would be agile in a knife fight. The question was whether it could survive against the air defense networks of 2030. Stealth was non-negotiable. Sensor fusion was non-negotiable. Internal weapons bays were non-negotiable. Turn rate, wing loading, and gun performance were not. In October 2001, Lockheed Martin's X-35 defeated Boeing's X-32 to win the JSF contract. The X-35 was, in some metrics, less agile than the X-32. It was selected because it carried the doctrine better. For 20 years afterward, critics measured the resulting aircraft by the old metric. The aircraft kept failing the wrong test. On the night of June 13, 2025, the Israeli Air Force launched Operation Rising Lion. F-35I Aders, the Israeli variant of the F-35A, modified with indigenous electronic warfare systems and extended range fuel, left Nevatim Air Base in the Negev Desert. Their target was the Iranian nuclear enrichment infrastructure at Natanz and Fordow, nearly 1,000 miles to the east, behind 3 layers of Russian-built air defense, outer ring early warning radars, the S-300 PMU-2 export variant, and inner ring point defense systems around the hardened sites themselves. The Adirs went in first. They did not turn. They did not maneuver. They flew straight ingress routes at altitude, identified the radar emissions from each S-300 battery using their electronic warfare suites, passed the targeting data to follow on strike packages via the data link, and watched as the radars went dark one by one. Behind them came F-15s and F-16s, carrying the heavy bombs that would penetrate the Natanz centrifuge halls. Above them, Iranian air defense crews scanned skies that, according to every metric they had been trained on, should have been empty. The campaign lasted 12 days. Iran would claim, on 3 separate occasions, to have shot down F-35s. None of the claims survived independent verification. The images Iran published showed F-35s photographed long before the war. Every Israeli Adir that flew came home. No Adir entered a dogfight. No Adir fired its cannon. The 25mm gun that the 2015 test pilot had complained could not be aimed went unused throughout the war. The aircraft did, in operational combat, exactly what the 1996 specification had said it would do. Find the enemy first, shoot the enemy first, kill the enemy first. The metric that mattered was not turn rate. It was kill chain length. The F-35 had the shortest one ever fielded. What happened to the dogfight? In every conflict involving 5th-generation fighters since 2018, Israeli strikes in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Iran, American operations in the Pacific, and coalition exercises at Red Flag, the within visual range engagement rate has been essentially 0. The F-35 has not been in a dogfight. The F-22 has not been in a dogfight. Modern combat happens beyond visual range, between sensors and data links and missiles fired from 60 miles away, before the opposing pilot knows the engagement has begun. The dogfight, as a measure of combat effectiveness, has been functionally extinct for at least a decade. It survives in the imagination because it survives in the movies, and because the framework that produced energy maneuverability theory was so dominant for so long that abandoning it felt like heresy. The 2015 test pilot's report was, in retrospect, a perfectly accurate measurement of a metric that no longer mattered. The F-35 cannot win a turn-and-burn fight against an F-16. This is true. It is also true that the F-35 does not need to. It is the operational equivalent of complaining that a submarine is bad at flying. This is the most common failure mode in military analysis, measuring a new weapon by the metrics of the war it was built to escape. It happened to the battleship before the carrier. It happened to cavalry before the machine gun. It happened to manned bombers before the cruise missile. Every time, the people inside the old doctrine had the credentials and the data and the loud voices. Every time, the war proved them wrong by simply refusing to be the war they had prepared for. An aircraft is not a list of specifications. It is an answer to a question. The question the F-35's designers were asked in 1996 was not how to win a dogfight. It was how to survive against an air defense network the West did not yet know how to defeat. The answer they built was strange-looking, expensive, and incomprehensible inside the old framework. Over Iran in 2025, it became that question's only known correct answer. The lesson is not that the critics were stupid. They were not. They were measuring with the instrument they trusted. The lesson is that the instrument was no longer measuring the war. When the war changes, the metrics change. The aircraft that wins the next war is rarely the one the last war's framework rewards.